1 year to the day after the Space Shuttle Challenger blew up, killing all 7 astronauts on board, the nation took time out today to remember and to mourn. NBC's Robert Hager reports tonight that ceremonies were held in many places around the country.
At Cape Canaveral, as the clock reached 11:38 a.m., the time the Challenger lifted off, silence was observed for 73 seconds. That's how long the flight lasted. At the same time, a flag dropped to half-staff at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where the astronauts trained. In Washington, the families of the Challenger astronauts met with Vice President Bush to enlist support for a memorial space learning center being planned in Houston. President Reagan beamed a message to space agency employees.
America will never forget that terrible moment a year ago when our elation turned to horror and then to grief and pain.
At a chapel near Arlington National Cemetery, the families attended a special memorial service. NASA Administrator James Fletcher.
Dick, Mike, J.R., L., Ron, Greg, and Krista. We will never forget their sacrifice.
At Cape Canaveral, 11:39 and 3 seconds, the time of the explosion.
We will never forget their dream. We will never let them down. But we will all miss them very much.
Robert Hager, NBC News, Washington.
In a moment, I'll have a special report on the effort to get the American space program back on track. Launch Complex 39B, Kennedy Space Center, Cape Canaveral, Florida. It was from here that 1 year ago today, January 28th, 1986, that the Challenger astronauts were launched on their fateful journey.
Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Challenger, go at throttle up.
Challenger, go at throttle up.
1 minute, 15 seconds. Velocity 2,900 feet per second. Altitude 9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 7 nautical miles. Obviously a major malfunction. The vehicle has exploded. Flight director confirms that.
In the years since then, of course, the American space program has undergone a major re-examination. Not just what went wrong with the Challenger, but where do we go from here, and how do we get there? Yet, midway between the Challenger accident and the scheduled launch of the Discovery, problems remain. Some have gotten worse. The space program cannot expect that its problems will disappear like so many pieces of Challenger debris.
Where are they identified?
Jim Smith is a hopeful but weary man. Every morning, the engineer in charge of the shuttle's solid rocket boosters is at Marshall Space Flight Center by 7. There are rounds of meetings with other engineers, a quick lunch in the center cafeteria, more meetings, all geared toward a February 1988 launch date for Discovery.
Unless something very unforeseen happened, we have a very good chance of pulling it off, I think.
But as tests of various redesigns, and there are nearly 200 in all, as they move forward, NASA officials are beginning to tone down official promises on a launch date. Any test problems could lead to delays.
I'm not 100% confident, no. And, we'll have to see how it goes in 1987. I don't have that confidence in the system right this minute.
No one will be watching the launch of the next shuttle with any more interest than the American military. The military has a very large stake in this program. By early next year, there will be a backlog of some 25 military payloads stored at defense plants around the country. Spies in the sky, early warning satellites, communication satellites, navigation satellites, all delayed, all needed.
It's probably going to be the end of the decade before the photo reconnaissance situation. Our spy satellites are back up to speed. Our early warning satellites, it's going to be a couple of years again before they're ready to go.
The most important by any measure is the KH-12, or Keyhole, spy satellite. Each one costs $2 billion. It is the way that we'll keep track of what's going on inside the Soviet Union.
You can resolve these pictures down to the size of a baseball, and in effect, you can get pictures of the baseball game being played as it's happening within 15 or 20 minutes of the event.
The KH-12 was supposed to be launched from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California, but the $3 billion shuttle complex there has major technical problems. So it must be launched from the Cape, where it will have to await the flight of Atlantis. That's the second shuttle mission next spring. And without this kind of spy satellite capacity, any new arms control agreement with the Soviet Union would be a hard sell in the U.S. Senate.
If they went out and made some agreement on specific counts of missiles that we only can monitor from space, then I'd have to oppose it until we have that capability, because I do not believe the American people are just going to trust an agreement with the Soviets without us being able to verify.
The Soviet space system appears to be very well situated. They launched over 24 photographic reconnaissance missions every year for military reasons.
During 1986, the Soviets orbited a new space station, launched 90 other payloads, and began flight testing their own shuttle. All of this as the U.S. is trying to redefine its own program. When NASA was originally promoting the shuttle, it said it would be commercially profitable. Well, that's not happened, and in fact, that goal now has been abandoned. So others will have to pick up the business of launching commercial satellites. This is America's premier rocket factory, the Titan plant, near Denver. These contractors are being briefed on how private enterprise can fill the void.
Sounds like good business.
50 miles away in Colorado Springs, Art Dula is trying to sell satellite launch services. He's a salesman for the Soviet Union, which has the Proton rocket for hire.
If the Proton could save $20 million in the launch of a communications satellite.
Dula has yet to sign up any customers, but that puts him only one behind the entire U.S. rocket industry. And Dula tells everyone the Soviets are very serious competitors.
The Soviets have the biggest airline in the world. They have the biggest merchant marine. And I think that they intend to have the biggest commercial space operation on the Earth.
The Chinese are serious as well. They have contracts to launch 4 satellites, but Chinese rockets will not get as much business as the French, who will launch 40.
We have moved from a position of world leadership in launching satellites to a position where we're trying to catch up and uncertain as to whether we will.
And what of the grand dreams of exploring the cosmos, of leaving man's mark on the stars? The space station still is 7 years and $13 billion away. Moon and Mars colonies would cost $700 billion over 60 years. Some feel NASA's practical problems must take precedence over its dreams.
So long as they concentrate on these great visions and don't answer the practical questions of how to get there, they're going to remain just that, impractical dreams.
It's a little eerie standing here now. This had been the site of so much excitement, so much success. We had come to believe in the mastery of technology. We had come to believe that NASA was somehow superhuman, and then in an instant, we realized that that was not the case. It is an event that we will carry with us forever, the Challenger tragedy. And the curse and the appeal of television is that even if our memory dims, that picture is forever preserved. And then, of course, the Challenger astronauts, the American family. Black and white and yellow, men and women, and a school teacher. The most common bond of all, a school teacher. The United States will go back into space from here again, but it will never be the same. That's Nightly News for this Wednesday night. I'm Tom Brokaw. I'll see you tomorrow night.
I got one frame up.
What did you guys think?